Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name's Deb and this is DB Designs and Sewing Australia. Today I thought I'd take you through a tutorial on how to make aprons. This is an apron I've just made for my granddaughter Phoebe and it's a size 4 to 5, and I also make these aprons and matching oven mitts. So here's a little oven mitt that matches this apron. I make them for an online store called Angel's Creations. Angel's Creations is an online homeware store. I make these aprons and oven mitts for them to sell online. You should check out their store. They've got everything from room sprays, candles, a lot of hand painted things. Everything is handmade. There's nothing purchased in. They make all their own candles, they scent all their own candles, car diffusers, and a lot of acrylic work. So a great choice of things there on their site. I will put a link to their site on here, but I just wanted to show you this apron, and this one's easy to hold because it's small. And this is the other side of it. So this is a style where these side pieces are a separate facing, but you can make one that has the facing included. So it's just one piece plus the pocket. And I tend to use the soft cotton webbing rather than making ties for them, because I find the ties can be a little bit harsh on the back of your neck. And so I always choose the cotton webbing, because it's just much softer. And this is a little oven mitt in the small size. So what I'm going to do is show you and take you through how I make an apron that has the facing included in it. I've also got some other aprons here. This is one for my grandson, and my daughter told me that his other one is too short for him now. So I've made him, he's obsessed with maps, and so this is world maps. It has got a seam across here because the world map fabric was only sold in panels and the panel was not long enough for him. So I have made him this one, another one with the cotton webbing, and this is one for my daughter. And they're all made of cotton drill. Madden's also has a matching oven mitt, and Abby's has a matching adult size oven mitt also. Now what I will say is the best thing about these aprons is you can wear them as low or as high as you want. So if you've got something that's very, very splashing that you're going to be cooking, you can wear it right up. All you're doing is adjusting the sides. Now this is one that I wear all the time, and so you can have it right up to your neck if you want to. I usually wear it probably there. And they are very handy and very versatile. I've made a lot of men's ones, and that's what I'm going to be making today. Today I'm going to be making one that has the facing included in it. Now here we are, we've got our pattern laid out on our fabric. This is the fold, and I haven't pre-washed the fabric. I don't pre-wash aprons because it won't matter if it shrinks by 1/4 of an inch. So this is the fold. This is the, well, you can't hardly see that. This is the top section here, and that's going to fold over rather than having a facing on this style. This is the side, and that's going to fold over rather than have a facing. And this is just the side and the bottom that will get hemmed. Now I have made these patterns myself. I originally started with the one with the facings, and for myself personally, that's the style I prefer. But we'll see how this one goes for some of the men that I know that I've made aprons for, if they're a bigger type of man, I have made them a much wider apron so that it wraps around a bit. It needs to wrap around your sides a little bit. Otherwise, you're still going to get stuff on your clothes, especially when you're barbecuing, which is mainly, I think, what men would use them for. Okay, that's just the pocket, so we'll just leave that for the moment. So, just cutting out, I have drawn a chalk line, and as I said, I made these patterns myself. I think I originally made the one with the facing off an apron that I already had, and I really like the style of it because you could adjust it up. I think it did have ties made out of the fabric, and that's how I knew that we actually needed a more comfortable style of tie. So now it's all cut out. Here we've got our pocket, and here we've got our apron. So now let's go to the ironing board. So the first thing we're going to do is press down a really small allowance on the top, because we actually want this to be, you could always overlock the edges and just turn them over once. We actually want them to be sort of nice and thick, and it looks much more aesthetically pleasing. Now I have turned this over by 1/2 centimetre, and now I'm going to do the much deeper, which is actually 3.5 centimetres. But I made these so much, I just eyeball it. So that's one of the first things we'll sew, but I tend to do all of my pressing and then only come back for the side bands. So remembering that this side band here is going to get turned over and turned. You need to be careful with it because it is a bias now. Turn it over twice. Needs to be wide enough to fit the webbing through, but it's the last thing that you stitch down because you need the channels either end open so that your tape can go through it. So now I'm just going to do about 1/2 centimetre again, remembering that if the steam's burning your hands when you're pressing, turn the steam off. I don't know how many years it took me to work that out, that it actually wasn't the iron that was burning me, it was the steam. So now I'm turning it over. It's probably about yes it is, it's 1 centimetre now. So this is my sides. And now we'll do the other side. And when I make these, and I'm making a lot of them for Angel's Creations, I actually batch sew them. So I cut them all, press them all, and then sew them depending on thread colour. So I'll sew all the ones that have the red thread or all of the ones that have the green thread, because I often will do a small, a medium, like an adult's, and a medium and a small, all in the same fabric. I think a lot of people buy sets for mothers and daughters or fathers and daughters, or I should probably say parent and child, because it's not just women that cook. And there's plenty of boys that love to cook with their mum or their dad as well, or with their grandma. I'll insert some photos of my grandchildren with their aprons on. I think it's from nearly 2 Christmases ago when we were making gingerbread houses, and you can see their aprons. I also have made other ones to order with children's names on them. I will insert a photo of the beautiful ones that I made for the lady that works next door to me for her grandchildren. It's absolutely beautiful. Now when it comes to this bottom hem, I've turned up like 1/2 centimetre here, but we're going to do a much larger hem here. And how much is this hem? This is 4.5 centimetres. I just find that's a much more aesthetically pleasing hem length. I don't often do a narrow hem on these. I'd have to really have been running out of fabric to do a narrow hem. So just measuring it up, but mainly just eyeballing it. It is an apron after all, so we don't have to get too carried away with everything being too perfect. Just pressing this down, trying to keep that turn under. And this is actually, turn the steam on. This is actually a coffee themed apron. And I'm actually making it for my husband because of all the aprons I've made, he doesn't have one. I've made them for everyone else and I've never made one for him. So, Merry Christmas, Neil. That's what you're getting. So, now I've done all of those parts, I'm ready to stitch on the sewing machine. Now, here we are at the sewing machine. I've had to turn off my lamps, so I hope that you can see, because I can't. As you can tell, I have lamps all over my sewing room, and that's what happens when you're over 60. You can no longer see. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew the top part down, which is this part here, although this one is made from a facing. So, just going to machine it, going to do back stitch, always back stitching. And because I like the look of it better when it's a bit chunkier or a bit thicker looking at the top, I am going to do, even though it doesn't need it for secure purposes, I am going to machine stitch across the top. And I'll just be doing a narrow stitch. So I'm just changing my machine all the way to the right hand side to do that one. And aprons really are an easy make. If you are a beginner sewer, it's an excellent thing to sew because it's really just all straight lines and there's not much to it. Now I'm going to start to sew the side seams. So put this back where it was. With the side seams, we're just sewing it down, back stitching. And when we get down to the end, nearly down there. And now wear to the big hem at the bottom of the apron. So I'm just going to make sure that that gets caught up in the hem correctly. As it is that thicker part. I'm going to turn. And I'm just turning so that we can have a nice neat edge and all of the edges are sewn down. And this also puts this in the right position for me to sew all the way down the deeper hem to the other end. I do have my stitch length on 2.6, so a little bit larger than I use for sewing garments. But that's just because it really does look like a top stitched item, and it's just a bit more aesthetically pleasing to have a longer stitch length. It just looks nicer. And when I get to this end, so we can enclose this part here and not have that come out or open up, I'm going to sew back down to the bottom. To where I want. I'm going to turn, just sew a couple of stitches, maybe one more, and then once again we're in the right position to sew it all the way up the other side. And because we press this, you don't have to pin it. Because it's cotton drill, it sort of stays pretty pressed. Back stitching again, just sewing off the end then. Okay, so that's our apron all made up. We really just have to trim off these threads. We just have to do these sides. Oh, and the pocket. When you were not looking, I made a pocket. So here's the pocket. Now, it's just got small allowance turned over once, except at the top, because at the top we're going to stitch that down. I'll stitch that down now. I'll just grab onto these threads to make sure it's going to come through. Okay, through these. Grab onto them again. So we're just stitching that down so it's neat on the top of the inside, and that you're not going to get any frayed little bits coming out. Just back stitching. So that's that part of the pocket. We'll come back over to the ironing board and we'll do the placement of the pocket and ironing up the side edges so that we can stitch that, and we're nearly finished making the apron. Now here we are back at the ironing board. I've already done one of the sides and I'll just show you how I did that, and I'm mainly just eyeballing it. Once you've made a few of these aprons, you'll know whether or not it just looks right. But what I do measure is I want 4 centimeters as my turn up for my channel, for my tape to run through, or for my tie to run through. That's 4 centimeters. Just measuring both ends. That's 4 centimeters. Just pressing that, and I will put a couple of pins in this because I don't want it to move. I'm remembering that this is on the bias, so it can stretch before it's stitched. And while you weren't looking, I also pinned my pocket on. So you can see that I've pinned my pocket on just with a couple of pins. This is the pocket here. So this is the double turned hem at the top, and the other is just the single turn on the other 3 sides. Let's go back to the sewing machine and I'll show you how I finish it. Oh, first of all, I'll also show you what I do with the tape. Besides cutting it nice and straight. The ends of the tape, I just turn them over twice. So I've just turned that over twice so that the raw edge, because they do fray unbelievably, so that the raw edge is tucked inside. And then I'll sew a cross and a square. And I've actually worked out how to sew that in all 1 stitch length without going over the same spot twice. But I'll show you that back at the sewing machine. Now we're back at the sewing machine and we're ready to sew the sides that are going to be the channel that the ties run through, or the tape runs through. And rather than just stitching it down here where it starts, I'm going to stitch it from up the top so it all looks top stitched. So as you can see, a very easy thing to make, and it looks so effective and it's so useful. Sewing all the way back down to here. So then I only need to trim off that thread wherever it's gone here. So that is that side done. Let's just quickly do the other side and then I'll show you how I sew the pocket. So I'm just lining this up so I can see where I would start on this side. So that's all sides sewn up. Now, the only thing left to sew is the pocket. And so, what can you see? Here. So this is the pocket here, and I'm going to start from the top, and I'm going to sew on the very outside edge. It's actually hard to see because of this fabric. On the outside edge, and then when I get to the line of stitching where I've done the double hem, I'm going to sew across about 3 stitches, sew back up, sew across the top and then back down again and all the way around, and do the same to the other corner. This will just reinforce the corner so that they don't rip the pocket off, depending what they put in it. I don't think people really put their hands much in an apron pocket, but you never know. Maybe they put some sort of barbecuing equipment in it, who knows. So now I am up to where that stitching line was, and I'm just going to sew across 3 stitches. And then back up to the top again, making sure I catch the top. I don't want to sew over the end. Just making sure that needle goes into there. And now sew all the way down. I have got a couple of pins in this, but as you can see, it's already come undone. And pocket placement is really personal choice. I have seen a few people with the pockets up really high, but if you put something in it, it seems a bit odd. But we'll do the pocket, and then I sew a center seam, a row of stitching here down the center of the pocket to split it into 2. But you could actually split that into as many things as you wanted, as many compartments as you wanted it to be. Now we've reached this end again. So I'm just making sure I just go right to the end and not off the end. Just sewing down again. Right to the corner. Then we've got 3 stitches. Then back down again to the stitch line. And then just back stitching to secure it. So it really is a very easy apron to make. Now the one with the facings is not as fast to make, but when I batch sew, I can make 4 of these aprons in 1 hour. So it is fast once you get going. And of course, when you batch sew, you've got the correct color thread and you're sewing all of them at once. And I will often do the facings with a calico rather than with the fabric. Just depends how much of the fabric I've got. Now this is just sewing a center line, which I'm just following the fold line, as all of this fabric comes folded in half. So it's really easy to find the center of everything if it's all cut on the fold. So now our apron is complete, and just want to sew the ties. So this is the end that I folded over twice before. So now I'm just sewing across Trimming all those threads. And this is just securing in this end, because when you wash it, it'll all just really fray. So it looks like that and like that. Makes a nice neat end. And now we will just thread it through the apron. So here's our apron. Here's the pocket. And here's what the back looks like, so you can really see it. So the difference between this type and the other type with the facings is that the facings come right up to the edge here. So when you look at mine, my facing comes all the way to the top edge. And the facing's really just made using a template of your pattern. So there's no big mystery about how to make a facing. Just make a facing using your actual pattern piece. So now I just thread the tape through, and I just use a bodkin to thread the tape through. Although I did notice that on Kristen's site, the Dahlia Society, she had a really groovy, flexible tool that you can thread things with that looked quite good. Thought I might have to get one of those. It's something I haven't got. So this one has got a long tape. I did buy this tape especially for this apron, whereas I usually use, no, I haven't got any of it. Oh, here it is. This is folded in half and sewn, but it is twice as wide as this, and this is what I usually use. That's just folded in half and sewn because that's the little tab that I put on the oven mitts. And the oven mitts is just a pattern that I got from Sweet Red Poppy. I'm sure it was Sweet Red Poppy. So, Crafty Gemini. And what I did was, that's the adult oven mitt. And I just reduced the size on the printer to make the smaller ones. So I reduced it to, I think, probably 85% for the middle size one, which is that one, and then probably to 75% for the children's one, for the real small one. And so that actually worked out really well, just reducing the pattern by the size on the printer. You know, it says, do you want to print it 100% or what do you want to print at? I just tried that and it worked out really well. Now, just to show you the difference between an apron with the facing, this is an apron with the facing. I think I just like the curve of it better than the one with the straight sides that's self-faced or self-channeled. So that's this one. And this is the one that I just made. So you can see that the sides are slightly different. This comes in a bit closer. It's probably okay for a man, but when you've got a bust, I think it's nicer that it comes in closer. When you compare the two, they're not all that different. So you can see the difference between them is not all that much difference, but that curve seems, much prefer that. And all the ones that I make for Angel's Creations are all with the facing. That's for all of them. Now, what else I'm making in the way of aprons is when the grandchildren come to make gingerbread houses, I'm making them all new aprons to wear. I've got this really lovely, up the right way, koala fabric, koala Christmas fabric. I've got that colourway and I have got this colourway. And for myself, I think it's called poinsettia Christmas flowers or Christmas plant. Now, all of these fabrics are just a normal cotton. They're not a drill. I couldn't get any Christmas fabric in a drill. So I will be fully lining those aprons in calico. So I buy calico, a bolt of calico, and I will be fully lining those aprons for the children. And even though the littlest fellow, who's 1.5, won't be making gingerbread houses, I will also be making him an apron, and I'll be making the new baby a bib. Her bib will be underlined with toweling. So that's what I'll be doing for that. And I will show you photos of the children in the aprons making the gingerbread houses when we do that in December. So here's just a close-up of the oven mitt. They are fully lined and they're quilted. That's just a checkered quilting. That's some crazy quilting on the other side. And I'll show you what I put in the middle of them. I use this and it's called Insul Fleece. Now, Insul Fleece is a heat protector and that's quilted into the oven mitts. So they're actually really beautiful oven mitt and they are heat proof. So they are a proper oven mitt and that's what I use to quilt. So that's padded, as you can see here. It's got a right side and a wrong side. So on the outsides of both sides, just under here is the silver part and just under here is the silver part. So it doesn't matter which hand you use it on, your left or your right, or if you've got two of them, it doesn't matter because you're protected from the heat of your oven because both sides of this are quilted with the Insul Fleece. If you would like me to show you how I make the oven mitts, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know. But they are for sale along with the aprons on Angel's Creations site. I have put the link in below, but definitely go and have a look on the site. Absolutely beautiful products and quality products. Everything is handmade. So many painted items. Beautiful placemats and coasters and vases and bottles. Everything's handmade. A lot of resin work, a lot of bespoke resin work that can be made just for you, depending what your requirements are. They will make them for you and you can order anything. The room scents are just beautiful, much nicer than some that I've paid a lot more money for, and they all come beautifully packaged. So pop onto that site and have a look. I have linked the site on this video. So pop down and have a look. Now the other thing I'm about to make is a cover for a Thermomix. I'm not sure which model three of my sisters have got Thermomixes and I'm not sure which model they've got, so I will have to find out, but I did download a pattern from Pattern Emporium. It also says it's for an overlocker. So that'll be interesting, but one of my sisters has got a window backsplash in her kitchen and she thinks that the light coming in might heat up her Thermomix too much. So I will be putting the insul fleece in hers so to protect her Thermomix from any heat that comes from any sunlight that comes through. So once I've made those, I'll show them to you. So that's all for this week. Everybody have a really good week. Don't forget to start thinking about your Christmas shopping. And I'll be back next week with all of my different makes from this week where I've actually been making some clothing. So until then, everybody have a great week. See you later.